Greetings to one and all. We are on the 22nd day of Elul, 8 days before the holy year of 5778, and the way that the ball bounces, as they say, the way the drum rolls, drumstick rolls. This will be our last class of 5777. Next week at this time we'll all be getting ready for Rosh Hashanah. It will be the eve before Rosh Hashanah. So I take this opportunity to those out in computer land, in YouTube land, and wherever you might be, that there should be a tremendous year for all of us. Redemption of the people of Israel, redemption of the world. We should see a world of Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad, God is one. We should see the ingathering of the exiles, Birachamim, with mercy, and we should see a great upcoming year for all. Okay, they tell the following story that in an apartment building on the 15th floor, there were two neighbors. One was a Jew, one was a Gentile, and there was something very unusual happening on that floor. When the Jew, every time the Jew went for a vacation or for some kind of conference, so he left his house and nothing happened to the house. When he came back, everything was in order. You know, no burglaries, no robberies, everything was fine. The other hand, his Gentile friend on the same floor, 15th floor, he would go away for much less often than his Jewish friend, and when he came back, most of the time his apartment was broken into. So one day he was fed up. He came up to his Jewish friend and said, "Listen, I don't understand. You go away many times a year, nothing happens to your apartment. I go away a few times a year, and it gets broken into. What's your secret?" So I was telling this to one of my kids, and they said maybe it was the Jewish guy that was breaking into his neighbor's house. So maybe. But anyways, I guess this guy did not suspect his Jewish neighbor. He knew better than that, you know, one of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not steal. So, he says, "Listen, I got a great idea for you. We have something that, us Jews, we have something we put on the door to protect our homes." And he goes with his Gentile friend, and he shows him the mezuzah on the doorpost. And he said, you know, if you'd like, I'll pick one up for you at the Jewish bookstore, and you put it on your door, and we'll see what happens. Wow, it's unbelievable. You just put that little sucker on your door, and you're safe? That's great. Wow. Okay, so he goes to the bookstore the next day. He buys one for his friend, non-Jew, and the non-Jew, you know, picks it up and nails it, not on the cross, but he nails it up there on the doorpost. Good you didn't get that one. And, okay. Approximately like 2 months later, this non-Jewish fellow comes running up to his Jewish friend, and he says, "Wow, it's unbelievable. Since you gave me that little box to put up on the door, there have been no break-ins, no robberies since then. It's unbelievable. I mean, where did you get this thing from? It has special powers. But please take it off." What? Say what? What? You just got finished telling me how great it works. You haven't had any burglaries for the last couple of months. Why should I? No, you got to take it off. Explain yourself. Why have to take it off? He says, "Listen, true, since I put up that little thing on my doorpost, I have no burglaries. But every 5 minutes, someone's knocking on the door asking for charity." Think about it. It's okay. Okay. A little joke there before, you know, utshuva, utfila, tzedakah. Those are 3 things that help us annul the decree. If you give charity, is one of them. So don't be nervous if somebody's knocking at your door every 5 minutes. Okay, part 3. Yeah, it sounds like a Casey and the Sunshine Man album. It's called Part 3. This is Part 3. Our title, hopefully with God's help, we'll finish it off today for the new year. The title is, What is Not Holding Back the Redemption? What is not holding back the redemption? And we're talking about Jewish outreach to the Gentile world, to convince the Gentiles to observe 7 commandments of Noah. We are basing our rebuttal, our classes are based on a class that was given by a very, very important Jew, a very, very holy, very special Jew. I say that seriously, no tongue-in-cheek there, but it has to be answered. And so far we've taken different sentences of his class, and we've discussed them and we've looked into them further to see if this is so. Okay, so Part 3. Next statement that we had in this class by this important rabbi was the following, that, okay, hold on to your chairs here, we don't have insurance here, that the verse, thou shalt love thy neighbor, means you should love everybody. It means love Gentiles, love everybody. Love thy neighbor. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Like, whoa, that's a whammy our way. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha means to love your neighbor, love everyone, love humanity, love everyone, yeah? So we are going to look into this subject. Is that so? And the proof of the rabbi was that it doesn't say ve'ahavta, you should love your fellow Jew. It doesn't say Israel, or it doesn't say Jew. It just says your neighbor. Okay, so we're going to call a timeout on the court. I know that we've already passed the first week of the NFL, so we're going to call a big timeout here on the court. And let's teach a great lesson. Folks, just to come today to hear this lesson, it was worthwhile. No extra charge for this lesson. Chazal say, our sages say the following. Every time you see the following word, re'echa, your friend or your neighbor, we'll translate it loosely into English. Whenever you see the word li're'echa, you know what that means? Re'echa b'torah, re'echa b'mitzvot. It means your friend or your neighbor who's with you in the Torah, who's with you spiritually with the commandments, which means that the law, whenever you see the word re'echa, it means that this law applies, whatever it might be, this law applies not to all Jews. Forget the Gentiles. It doesn't apply to all Jews. Right? It doesn't. It just applies to the Jews that have box seats. The Jews that are already have tickets, are in the stadium, not the ones outside. Which means if you're not keeping the Torah, if you're not keeping the commandments, so you are exempt from those people. Now, I'm not going to get involved right now. In our times, there's a new son, so to speak, right? Rav Ovadia Yosef spoke about a 5th child on Passover. The 5th child does not know how to ask. There's not even 4 questions. It's just like, doesn't know how to ask. It's not our subject. Today there's a concept of Jews that never learned. So we're not talking about those kinds of people. I'm not talking about that law. Okay, but in general, people that have seen a book, people that have read, people that have learned. So this is an amazing thing. This rabbi is telling us that the commandment, ve'ahavta l'recha, you should love your neighbor, is talking about the world. And here we're coming and a TKO over here, baby. It's just like we're saying, not only does it not apply to the nations, it doesn't even apply to all Jews. Jews that are not following the Torah, Jews that are fighting against the Torah, Jews that are fighting against the commandments. We hear today in Israel, we hear about possibilities of soccer games on the Holy Sabbath. We hear about possibilities of annulling the yeshivot that learn 3 or 4 years in yeshiva and do a year and a half of the army. We're listening. There are rumors that this is going to be canceled, that there's no longer going to be an opportunity for a person to do also yeshiva and also do less time in the army. You're going to have to do like everybody else, which is also interesting to think about it. Because sometimes, you know, the famous story in the Holocaust when, you know, when people cried and, well, I'm not that kind of person, so I didn't come to help until they came after you, and there was no one else to help. You know that one? So it's very interesting here. It might be a tremendous boomerang here, that what they've been trying to do to what they call the Haredi community, the black hat community, trying to draft them into the army against their will, this might boomerang because we were silent. Our camp was silent with the knitted kippot. I might not have one, but they were silent. And now it's interesting. Now, with this court decision, yesterday or so, it might boomerang that they might nullify that agreement that they have with all these dozens and dozens of yeshivot, of Torah studying places, where they could mix their army with Torah studies. So it comes back to you. What goes around comes around. So let's look quickly, with God's help. Let's just look at some of the heavy hitters in the scholastic work of the Torah. So let's start. Sefer HaChinuch, famous book. It brings down all the 613 commandments. Most of us are familiar with it. Let's look up commandment 243. The commandment is called, it is a commandment to love all Jews. Yeah, you heard it right here. Not all people. No. Okay, it says the following. One must love every single Jew. A tremendous love, a soulful love. That we will have mercy on the Jewish people. And just like we are careful with our money, we will be careful with the funds of our fellow Jews. And just like we take care of ourselves, we will take care of our fellow Jews. So you got it right there. We're not talking about the nations. We're talking about the commandment is to love the Jewish people. Let's move right along. Next book, famous. It's called Minchat Chinuch. Expands on the Sefer Chinuch, which we just quoted. So we're on the same commandment, 243, and here's what he says. Check this out. It says it's a mitzvah to love all Jews. And it says the following. Only the Minchat Chinuch, he writes the following. He says the commandment to love all Jews doesn't really mean all Jews. It means a Jew that is a kosher Jew. Okay, a kosher Jew. But if he sees some Jew that is constantly committing sins, it is a commandment to hate such a person. So once again, not only are we not talking about the world, I love the world, I love Lucy, we're talking about not even all Jews. You know, we don't discriminate. It's not just the nations. It's also some of those Jews that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And what I'm writing, the Minchat Chinuch writes, what I am telling you is not my idea. It's written on a commentary of Maimonides, of the Rambam. It's Hagot Maimoniyot, on the sixth chapter of the laws of Deot. Okay, Jewish ideas. And listen to this, he goes one step further. Even though a person believes in all the 13 principles that the Rambam wrote out, the foundations of Judaism, even though a person believes in that, but however, when it comes to the fact that even though he believes in the principles, if he continuously is sinning, then the commandment to love fellow Jews does not include him. Unbelievable. He believes in the 13 principles of Judaism, foundations. Even so, it is, if you see somebody that's over and over again doing various transgressions, and he's not listening to people that are trying to convince him otherwise, it is not only a commandment not to love him or to help him, but also there's a commandment to hate such a person who is flying in the face of God and His Torah. Let's move right along here. Maybe it's just two opinions. The Sefer Chinuch and the Minchat Chinuch. Two opinions. No, it ain't. If we look in Maimonides, in the 206th positive commandment, in the Torah, there are positive commandments and negative commandments. Okay? So in the 206 positive commandments, it says the following: you should love everyone from that is part of the Jewish covenant, B'nai Brit, those that have joined us in the Jewish, in the Torah covenant. The Rambam, that's the headline here. Not the nations of the world, not your neighbor, Julio and Jose and Harvey, not those neighbors. Okay, now, that's just the headline of the Maimonides, to love those that are connected to you with the covenant of God, Torah. Let's look a little bit more into in the Maimonides book, the Book of Commandments. He writes the following. Commandment number 206. God has commanded us, listen to the words of the Rambam, very interesting, that some of us should love some of us. You got it. Lehov ktsatenu et ktsatenu. Just like we love ourselves, and we should have mercy, and our love should be for them like it is to us, in our being, in our body, and in our monetary. We should go out for the next person. This is an amazing Rambam here in his Book of Commandments. He's telling us that only a portion of us are commanded to love, only a portion of us. Once again, it's the same. If you think about it, it's the same exact concept as we heard in the previous Minchat HaChinuch, that if you see a Jew, even though he believes in the 13 principles, but he's doing all kinds of sins, and therefore we rebuked him and he's not listening, there is no longer not only a commandment not to love that person, but also there is a commandment to hate such a person. If you think that maybe we're reading too much into the Rambam, he's going to say it straight out. Let's hear it. In his other halachic Jewish law work, in the Laws of Jewish Ideas, chapter 6, commandment 3, paragraph 3, excuse me. He says the following: it is a commandment to love all Jews like his body, like himself, as it says, "Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha," and therefore you should speak kindly about other Jews, and you should also be considerate about another person's money when you're dealing with another person's money or belongings. You should be very, very careful, like you would do yourself. You know, sometimes you can tell if a person is his car or a rent-a-car. You know, sometimes you can tell by the way they're driving, is that his car or is it a rent-a-car? And on paragraph 5, of course, he says that a person should not hate another Jew. He doesn't say people, in your heart. Once again, we're clearly talking about here, the Rambam is clearly talking about those Jews that are in the same ballpark, which means the Jews that are believe in the principles the 13 principles, foundations of Judaism, and we're talking about Jews that do not constantly over and over again sin or incite, of course, against Judaism. This the Rambam told us in his statement previously. Okay, maybe that's just three halachic Jewish law authorities. But let's keep on going here. In the famous Jewish law book called Sefer HaYireim, it's in the chapter 224. It says the following: that God has commanded us in the book of Leviticus. It says you should love your neighbor, you should love your friend or your neighbor like yourself. And Rabbi Akiva came by and said this is a very, very important principle in Torah. In Torah. Now, one might say here, we got you, Yehuda. It doesn't say here Israel. It doesn't say the Jewish people. Okay? It just says you should love your friend or your neighbor. But on the bottom, the Sefer Yereim brings where he's bringing this in. Where is his sources? He's not a new guy on the block. He's just bringing in the words. And let's look at where his sources are from. His sources are from, you might sound familiar, the Rambam, Positive Commandment 206, we read it. The Rambam, The Laws of Jewish Ideas, 6th chapter, the 3rd law. Oh, you might have heard that one. The book of Chinuch, you might have heard that one. Commandment 243. Yeah, very interesting. So there we go. And now, not only that, he says it straight out. He says the following. When it says, like yourself, why does it say like yourself? It's trying to limit other people. What does it mean, like yourself? If somebody is not like yourself, is not a good Jew, but a Jew that is constantly doing, and he doesn't feel bad. We're not talking about people that sin often, and they feel terrible about it, but they don't, like a person that wants to go on a diet. You know, he feels terrible that he's not able to stand up and continue the diet. He's not able to, you know, okay, we're not talking about those people. And in the famous words of Rabbi Sol Misalant, an unbelievable, the Chafetz Chaim, the Rabbi Sol Meir, Keged, HaKohen, came up to the Rabbi Sol Misalant, and he said, he wanted to know whether he should print his book on the laws of evil gossip. And after thinking about it a little bit, Rabbi Sol Misalant said, go ahead, copy the book, make copies of your book. Why? Because if a person feels bad, if a person now knows the laws of evil speech, and he knows these laws, and he feels bad, if a person, these are the words of Rabbi Sol Misalant, if a person does a sin and he feels bad about it, it is a difference of heaven and earth. That's what a difference it is than a person that doesn't feel bad. So it's a whole different ballgame. When you feel bad, we're not talking about those kinds of people that occasionally, we're talking about people on principle, people that are fighting against the Torah, fighting against the Judaism. So that's why it says, Kamocha, only love people that are on the same path as you are going, the same path of following God, following the commandments. Those are the ones. But if it's not, if it's a person who is a wicked person who's not following the Torah, okay, then those people, there is no commandment to love them. As it says, we have another source here, take it down, in a book called Avot Rabbi Natan, in the end of chapter 16. Avot Rabbi Natan, it says it straight out. Okay? But we're not finished with the Yereim. So he writes the following. Why does it say Kamocha? Why does it say like yourself? It has to be someone like you, somebody that accepts upon himself the yoke of heaven and loves the commandments like you. But if somebody does not accept upon themselves the yoke of heaven or does not observe the commandments, this person is wicked, and there is no commandment to love such a person. Actually, it's a commandment to hate such a person, and he brings two verses, one from Mishlei 8:13 and one from Psalms 139:21. Check it out after the class here. By the way, this law is also brought down. If you have your Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, check it out in one of the commentators. It's called the Magen Avraham. It's in Orach Chaim 156 and paragraph 2, where he says specifically that it's a mitzvah to love Jews that are following in the path of Hashem, that try their best to learn Torah, to do the commandments, to follow God's laws. They're doing their best. It's not talking about people that are fighting, that are on purpose not following the laws of God. So we have it here also from the Sefer Yereim. Moving right along, chug, moving right along, we have now Smak, Sefer Mitzvot Katan. Okay, Sefer Mitzvot Katan, he writes in the 8th commandment, he says, listen to his words, he says you should love your friend, as it's written, love your neighbor like yourself. And this also includes trying to make peace between your fellow men. Or it also includes trying to trying to think positive. Sometimes someone comes up to us and tells us what somebody did. It is a commandment usually, if the person is a good person, to try to think of ways that maybe we didn't understand what the person did. Maybe there's a reason, maybe there's a good reason why the person didn't do what we would have expected him to do, so let's not judge him unfavorably. But so, once again, here it might seem a little bit cloudy. It says, you have to love your friend, like the rabbi said. No, but look at the end. It says in the second temple, why was the second temple destroyed? It was destroyed even though the Jewish people were learning Torah. Who's he talking about? The Gentiles. The Jewish people were learning Torah, were doing kindness with one another, but even so the temple was destroyed. Why? Because the Talmud tells us in the tractate of Yoma, page 9, it says there, why was the temple destroyed if they were learning Torah, and they were observing and they were doing kindness, doing acts of kindness one another, because of the fact that they did not love one another, because of the fact that there was needless hatred. Who are we talking about? You can't say that the book Sefer Mitzvot Katan is talking about the nations of the world. He's talking specifically about the Jewish people, and he has an unbelievable acronym that he brings. If you take the first letters of the book of Lamentations that the prophet Jeremiah put together, Yirmiyahu, it says, listen closely, it says, Echa Yashva Bedat Ha'ir. The first words, how did a great metropolitan city like Jerusalem, there's so many millions of people there, now today after the destruction of the temple, it stands desolate. How has this happened? But if you take the first letters, Echa, Aleph, Yud, of Yashva, Badad, Bet, Ha'ir, Hey, it comes out to Eva, which means hatred. This is an unbelievable, only in the beautiful Holy Torah can we find, woo, what is that? I guess, did I hit the jackpot or something? Whoa, yeah, thank you there, Brother Lynn. Hit that phone, Jack. Okay, so we have it here. Why was the temple destroyed? You don't have to go further than the first 4 words of Megillat Eicha, of Lamentations, of the prophet Jeremiah. They spell out the words hatred. Aleph, Yud, Vet, Hey. Unbelievable. So once again, we have another source. This is our 5th or 6th source, which we see the commandment is to love the Jewish people. Our last one. Our last one for this statement that was made by this holy rabbi. The Sefer Mitzvot Gadol. Sefer Mitzvot Gadol. Here's what he writes in the 9th commandment. He writes the following: you shall love your friend like yourself. What you despise, don't do unto others, as it says in the tractate of Shabbat in the Talmud 21. But if a person is a wicked person and he does not receive, he does not receive rebuke, it is the commandment to hate such a person. As it says in the Tractate of Psachim, page 113. It says, those that fear God will hate wickedness and will hate the wicked. And as King David said, I hate those that hate God. So we see, folks, all across the table, we are talking about the commandment to love your fellow Jew, and not all Jews. Jews that are in the same ballpark. Jews that are traveling on the same path that we are. Okay, so this first point that we discussed, it's part of a bigger picture that this rabbi was trying to paint a picture of equality. That just like we thought, you know, that you have to love Jews, you have to love people. Equality, there's no difference, you know, love Jews, love people. There's, you know, you have to go out to try to help Jews, you know, save Jews. You have to go out and help save the nations of the world to make sure that they're observing the 7 commandments of Noah. It's called equality. If you really think about what he's saying, it's everything is equal. And we see now that it's not so whatsoever. And even within the Jewish people, there is no equality. And if you think about it, within the Jewish people, you have people that are Kohanim, priests, you have people that are Leviim, Levites, and you have Israel. And they don't have the same laws. They're different people. You have women. You have men. They don't have the same. I mean, what's going on over here? You know, different people, different strokes, different folks. Let's not make, it's not equality. The world is not an equal place. There's a lot of different kinds of people in the world here. Okay, next, our next equality point, I'll call it, is the rabbi says that not only did the Jewish people stand at Mount Sinai, but also the nations of the world stood at Mount Sinai. One second. Oh, so I just got to get it out. Wow. Yeah. Okay. I'm okay now. You don't have to call, what is it, 901 or something for emergency service? Yeah? I'm okay. Got it? The nations of the world also stood at Mount Sinai. I don't know, do you remember them being there? I don't remember them being there. I don't remember them being there. Folks, let's take it from the top. What we said as far as the commandment to love our fellow Jews does not include everyone. So therefore, the same thing here. Even within the Jewish community, there was no equality at Mount Sinai. Not everybody stood at the same point, at the same part of the mountain. Moses went up to a certain level. He was on the highest level. And Aaron, he wasn't with him. He was on a different pedestal, different spiritual level. It's true they received the Torah, but even within the Jewish people, there's a big difference between people. And then, not only Moses and Aaron is there a difference, but there's a difference between the 70 elders or the judges. There was a difference. They also were in a totally different. You know, you walk into a stadium. If you're a schlepper, you know, you're cheapskate, so they put you in the bleachers. You know, if you got the Bucks, you get the season seats. You're right there on the court. You know, you're right there near the players. Not everyone has the same seat. You know, there's different seats for different people. Not everyone. It's not one ticket gets you in wherever you want. Okay, but let's look. Is that a true statement? The nations of the world were standing at Mount Sinai. Now I know that many commentators tell us that any converts to Judaism, their souls were at Mount Sinai. That I know. Okay? But those are converts. Those are people that are Jews, just like all of us are Jews. Some of them are even better than us. So, that I know. But the nations of the world were standing, like, what were they doing there? Weren't they the same people that said, what does it say in that Torah? Oh, it says, thou shalt not murder. Hey, that's what we do for a living. Not steal, not steal. What do you mean? That's our breath. That's our every breath is stealing. I was told a story 2-3 days ago by the lifeguard at our pool in Elon Moreh. He used to have a spice factory in Elon Moreh, and he told me the following story. He used to have Arab workers there, and one night he happened to come. Usually, of course, he would open the factory in the morning and close it in the afternoon. But one night he had to do something, so he came, and lo and behold, he sees one of his Arab workers breaking in to the spice factory in Elon Moreh. So, grabs him, and he calls the police, and then in the meantime, till the police come, he's saying, "Why'd you do this to me? I gave you a job, I gave you sustenance, gave you money. Why'd you do this to me?" He says, "You don't understand. Listen to this." I was amazed. He said, the Arab turns to him, and he says the following, "You don't understand. From the time that we're nursing from our mothers, that's part of our milk. Okay, it's stealing. It's a part of the nursing from the time that we're infants, babies, newborns. That's part of the milk. It's part of our who we are. Stealing." What the Arab said. Amazing. I mean, I would never say that, but here we have, which is also very interesting, because of course the Torah tells us that when God wanted to give the Torah, He offered it to the nations of the world. So when He came to the Arabs, to the Ishmaelim, they asked, "What does it say in the Torah?" And they said, and God said, "Thou shalt not steal." Very interesting that they hit him exactly where it hurts. They hit the Ishmael, who represents the Arab nations, exactly in the point that hurts them, which is the stealing part. Okay, now, let's say this before we look in the Talmud. If you want to make a statement that the nations of the world knew about the giving of the Torah, okay, I take off my hat if I had one, and I say, okay, no problem. This is similar to what? The nations of the world, were they present at the splitting of the sea? By the way, this is unbelievable. If you saw any pictures recently, in the last day or two, of what's been going on with Sister Irma, what's going on with Irma, you see in Tampa Bay and other places where there was once water, the ocean, dry land. And not for 1 second. You keep on going and going. You see people walking. It's totally dry. But of course we don't believe in the splitting of the sea. How could a sea split and become dry? Yeah, he who laughs last, laughs last. You got it. This is an unbelievable Torah here, folks. Open up your eyes, look it up, check it out. Check it out, put it in, type it in there. You see in a few places, the water that was once ocean, totally dry. People walking, it's totally dried out. Hashem is getting good to have. So anyways, it is true. Were the nations of the world present when Hashem split the sea? No. The Egyptians were there, front seat. But not the nations of the world. Did the nations of the world know about this? Yes. Why? It says in the song, that Moses and the Jewish people sang, it says there that the Hashem created a miracle that everywhere in the world the water would split. Which means if you had a cup of water and you were in Nebraska or New Jersey, excuse me, I almost made a mistake there. So your cup of water would split, and if you had a girlfriend and everything was going well, she would split. Now it's just a little joke there, but any body of water would split. Maybe that's how they got the banana split, and maybe from the time of the splitting of the sea, maybe that happened to the banana, it came watery, I don't know. But anyways, okay, it is true. All the world knew what had happened at the Red Sea because of the fact that the miracle happened all over the world. But they were not present. So if you want to tell me that the nations of the world knew that the Torah was being given, I agree. But do not tell me it is not so, that equality here, that the nations of the world were invited and stood with the Jewish people on Mount Sinai? No way. Let's look it up. It says in the tractate of Zvachin in the Talmud, page 116, side 1. It says the following. Yitro heard, Vayishma Yitro. What did Yitro hear? One of the opinions in the Talmud is he heard about the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. Yitro, yeah, the same guy who's a righteous guy. Same guy who's a righteous guy. He wanted to save Moses, who eventually converted. He wasn't there himself. Vayishma Yitro. Okay, the sages asked, what did he hear? He heard about the giving of the Torah. And then he came to Moses. And he wanted to be part of the Jewish nation. He himself was not present. And you're telling me the nations were present there? But we go on. It says the following. When the Torah was given to the Jewish people, listen again, when the Torah was given to the Jewish people, there was a voice that went from one side of the world to the next. Ooh, a voice was heard from one side to the next. And then it says here, interesting, not all the nations, but all the kings of the nations. Malchei umot haolam. Okay? The kings of the nations, the rulers of the countries, they became frightened by this voice, by this noise they were hearing in their countries. And they themselves sang praises to God. Not only that, not only the ruling class, but it says in the times, at this time of the giving of the Torah, people came, nations came to the prophet, to the Gentile prophet of Bilam, and they said, what's going on? What is this noise that we're hearing? Is Hashem going to destroy the world one more time with water or with fire? And Bilam says no. Hashem is not destroying it. Hashem is now giving the Torah to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai. Once again, we see very clearly here, whether it's the ruling class, they heard a voice, they heard this sound, okay? They heard a holy sound, and they understood that the Torah was being given to the Jewish people. And some of the nations gathered up to Bilam, and they said, what's going on? Is God going to destroy the world? They didn't know what that noise was. They were not there. They were not present. He says, no, Hashem is now giving the Torah to the Jewish people. So we see, number one, even amongst the Jews, there's a totally different experience how you receive the Torah. Some people received it in a much, much heavier, in a much, much more spiritual manner. Some people a little bit less. Some people even less. Even within the Jewish people. The nations of the world were not present. Not present at all. They just had heard about it, okay, through a voice, a heavenly voice. Okay, next statement.